Welcome everyone, Questine here on Serious Gaming with the discussion about AMD versus Nvidia. The numbers for the second quarter of 2015 in terms of dedicated GPUs are out there, and it's as follows: 82% Nvidia, 18% AMD. Now it's worth remembering, before you say anything about the subject or you think anything about the AMD versus Nvidia, based on these figures, that the Fury X and the R9 300 series came out at the very end of the quarter. The second quarter is April, May, June. The Fury X and R9 300 series came at the end of June. So just something to remember here, right, when thinking about these figures. And it was obviously expected that AMD's market share would shrink further because Nvidia did release the 980 Ti closer, earlier. That's what I want to say. They released the 980 Ti earlier in response to AMD releasing the Fury X later down the line, and they did sell. They did have them out there for longer than AMD did in the second quarter. We have to wait for the third quarter to really see the effect of the Fury X, the Fury series, and the R9 300 series. My personal expectation is that AMD probably will regain some of their market share, but probably not a lot. I'd be surprised if they regain more than 10%, to be honest. Because here's the problem AMD has. It's not their hardware, it's not their performance of their hardware. Thinking that it's the benchmarks or is, how they actually performs or, anything like that. It's an image problem. It's a marketing problem. A regular user doesn't care about the benchmarks, doesn't look at the benchmarks. They don't buy a computer like that. We nerds, we people who care about that, we are in the minority. We're a small minority, right? Those of us that do care about it, like that look at benchmarks and decide which graphics card to buy based on that. It doesn't matter what the benchmarks say. It doesn't matter that, say for instance, recently with the first DirectX 12 benchmark in a game, it shows AMD kicking Nvidia's ass. People don't care about that because people don't look at benchmarks. It's a marketing issue, and on a marketing level, Nvidia dominates AMD. Look at what they've done this year, right? They've got so many titles with the way it's meant to be played, and they've got 3 of the biggest games that have come out or will come out soon this year. They've gotten deals with the publishers, developers of these games, which are free. Batman, Arkham Knight, even though it's terrible on PC, it's still one of the biggest games, and it will still eventually be re-released and fixed. And Metal Gear Solid. Now, Batman sucked dick, but which are free, despite my own personal misgivings on with that game. Didn't, and Metal Gear really looks amazing so far. So, getting those deals, having those games bundled with their GPUs does help them a great deal. And they know this. They've also put a lot of money and effort in terms of working with developers to improve their games. They're getting a lot of publicity, and a lot of it is good. There's not a lot of negative publicity that you can attach to Nvidia. Besides, AMD fanboys crying out against Nvidia. Besides that, and that's very limited, besides that, you don't really have anything negative to say about Nvidia as an overall company. Their business is doing well, their revenue is up, their income is up, they're doing quite well as a company. AMD is not. When you think of AMD, many people think of just the GPU side, but AMD is mostly CPU, like most of their business is CPU-wise. And AMD is doing terrible financially as a business overall. Like GPU-wise, that's probably the best part of their business right now. Like CPU, they're being decimated. They're not doing well at all. And people may hear about it, that AMD is not doing well, that their products are not that great. People hear a bunch of stuff that aren't necessarily true, but that's just how things go. And right now, the go-to GPU maker is Nvidia. Regardless of how you view these brands, I'm personally an Nvidia user, and I have my own reasons. I've mentioned these reasons in the past. I won't do so again. And I do feel that Nvidia is ultimately superior, but I'm the kind of person who looks at benchmarks, who looks at the data. But for a lot of people, they don't. And yet they hear that Nvidia is the go-to card maker, and so they buy an Nvidia card. The GTX 970 in particular is still, I think, is still the most popular card right there on the market right now. Even though it's not as good as some other cards, I'll really admit that it's not as good as some other cards that AMD has. That's fact. but you know, people will go for Nvidia setup because that's what they've heard is the best. So it's a marketing issue, and AMD doesn't have the budget to compete with Nvidia in terms of that. Their revenues are going down. Now, at this point, from my personal perspective, what would be best? Yeah, AMD will recover some of the market share in Q3. I expect they'll probably go to, I know, 75, 70, perhaps, maybe. If a miracle happens, maybe they'll go to 70 market share, maybe. But that still leaves them in a terrible position as I see it. The way I see it, what should happen is someone should buy AMD, just finish them as an independent company, and someone should buy AMD and pour a lot of money in them so that they can continue making good products. There's a catch. There's a big problem with that. As I said, most of AMD's business is CPU, and they're not doing very well on that department. Anyone who's going to buy AMD has to deal with that. Now, the problem with AMD CPUs is that they rely on a lot of Intel patents. A lot of Intel CPUs, by the way, rely on AMD patents. That's just how it is. And Intel and AMD has signed an agreement that basically is like this. They can use each other's patents, x86 patents, in particular for AMD. Most of their CPUs rely on Intel patents. But there's a catch, a poison pill, especially for AMD. If either of these companies gets bought out, gets purchased by someone, then they lose the patents of their competitor. So if Intel were to be purchased, they will lose AMD's patents. If AMD were to be purchased, they will lose Intel's patents. Intel is in no danger of being bought out, whereas AMD is in danger of being bought out. And anyone who buys AMD will have to deal with this. What's likely going to happen when someone buys AMD, if they buy AMD, if AMD doesn't just go down, if someone buys AMD, which I think is the most likely situation, we've heard rumors of Samsung, Microsoft, they're going to have to deal with Intel. And what this means is that they'll have to throw Intel a huge amount of cash in a settlement, because that's just how these things goes. Intel sometimes gives money to its competitors. Hell, I think at this point, Intel, AMD, and Nvidia are in a perpetual lawsuit cycle. Like, they're constantly in court against each other. That's just how these things go in the tech industry. Intel, AMD, Nvidia, you know, all major tech companies are in a court of law at any given point with a certain company. And that's just exactly what happens with Intel and Nvidia. Now, the problem is, because of that, a lot of companies may not desire to actually purchase AMD. There was a rumor of Microsoft. The thing is, there's a lot of shareholders in Microsoft, and there's the new CEO who actually just want Microsoft to stay a software company. They're not big fans of the Xbox. They're not gonna buy a hardware company like AMD. They're not gonna pour that money to buy AMD. And I think it's actually good that Microsoft's not gonna buy AMD. Like, yeah, okay, I think AMD should be bought out so that they can make good products again. Sure, I'm fine with that. Like, you know, revive ATI. That would be the best. Like, I don't like AMD, but I liked ATI. Like, ATI was good. I don't think AMD compares to that. Anyway, but but Microsoft's not willing to do it, and it's good because Microsoft would probably screw things over for everyone if they did. What about Samsung? Well, possibly a good idea if they desire to do it, and if they would actually keep AMD making GPUs, which they might not. We don't know. You know, that's the problem. If someone buys AMD, they might decide, you know, maybe we don't care about gaming GPUs or CPUs. Maybe we just don't care about that. Maybe someone who buys them is more interested in, you know, using their technology to make their, you know, mobile CPUs, processors, like Samsung would, for instance. Maybe Samsung would be interested in doing just that, for instance. So there is a danger there as well. But someone needs to buy AMD. If someone doesn't buy AMD, I suspect that they'll go down the drain in a couple of years, that they'll collapse financially in a couple of years. They're already doing very poorly. Hell, in the last few months, their stock market value has collapsed. Again, that's the second time that this happened. Or, well, not collapsed, but it's gone down significantly anyway. Their financials are in a pretty bad position. They're losing a lot of money. They're heavily in debt. They're not doing very well as a company. And it will take several years for them to go under. Hopefully by that time, someone does purchase them. That's all I had to say on the subject. Kosin here on Serious Gaming, signing out.